This is why white people are afraid of black people.
I was brought up in, quote, Bedford-Stuyvesant in my time. But I would like to say what scares us is I think we hear violence.
The young lady said she's afraid of violence. And isn't it sad that we who have been the victims of so much violence, now whites fear violence from us? We do not have a history of killing white people. White people have a history of killing us. See? And what you fear, may I say this, sir? What you fear, and it's a deep guilt thing that white folks suffer. You are afraid that if we ever come to power, we will do to you and your fathers what you and your people have done to us. And I think you are judging us by the state of your own mind, and that is not necessarily the mind of black people.
During the antebellum period, all the way going back hundreds of years. So I find it fascinating. And the psychological research has found recently that white folks in particular tend to view black men as bigger than they are, older than they are, and more aggressive than they are. There was a study done not too long ago with white folks, not even the Darren Wilsons of the world, forget him for a minute, done with white liberal folks, liberal in the sense that when they tested them for overt bias, they didn't have any. But then they took these non-biased, quote unquote, white folks, hooked them up to brain scan imaging machines and started flashing really fast, 85 millisecond subliminal images on a computer. So fast that your conscious mind doesn't even know what you saw, but your subconscious does. Some of the images were really meaningless, a blade of grass, a bunny rabbit, whatever, a bouncing ball. It didn't really do anything on the brain image machine. But then they showed a black male face for 85 milliseconds. And that part of the brain that responds to fear, anxiety, and stress lit up like a Christmas tree as long as that image was on the screen. And then when it was gone, the reaction went away. That was among quote unquote liberal white folks. That was among non-racist in the traditional sense white folks. So if that can happen even to supposedly open-minded folks, imagine how it's going to happen to a guy who by his own admission didn't like the neighborhood he was policing in. He said, nobody likes Ferguson. Nobody likes that neighborhood. It's a bad neighborhood. If that's your attitude about a place that you're asked to go and police and the people you're supposed to work with, you can't tell me that you haven't internalized those biases, because liberal white folks did, and he's no liberal.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, I'm so glad you're joining us, and kindly consider subscribing if you haven't. So today we are talking about something that's been a topic of conversation for a while now. So why are some white people so afraid of black people, and what's really the root of that fear? Well, this is a complex and very sensitive issue. But before we have this conversation, let's take a look at some of these videos that explore different perspectives on this. Then I'll be back and we can have the full conversation.
Have you guys seen that video that's going around of a black lad walking around in his neighborhood, and then he's being followed by a group of white people asking him why he's there? Because they particularly felt that he shouldn't be in this neighborhood. He repeatedly said to them, this is my neighborhood. They constantly following him and harassing him for being in that particular neighborhood. Now, this is a public road. Even if it wasn't his neighborhood, this is a public road. This is how scary, you have to be fearful of us, our black men, where they go. Because, anything could have happened to you. He had his mobile phone and he filmed it. He was filming it. And there was this one man, he drove up in his car like Starsky and Hutch. Yes, I'm that old, I remember Starsky and Hutch. And went for a gun. It was one of the other men that stopped him. But they were there harassing this guy. He's walking, minding his own business and harassing him. He's in his own neighborhood. His mother has now put a statement out, says, yes, they do live in the neighborhood. And he went out for a walk so he can have a word, speak to his girlfriend privately on his phone, And why is it white people are so scared of black people? What is it? If you're white and you're watching this, let me know. What is the problem with you and black people? Why are you so scared? And why is it that you have to harass our men, right? In particular, right? Why are you so scared? There's good white people and there's bad white people. There's good black people and there's bad black people. We're not all the fucking same. What is it that's going on? Why? And you're going to be called out because now we've got social media, we've got mobile phone, and we'll film that shit, right? So you're going to be called out. You know, it's particularly disturbing because, you know, anything can happen. What about the lad they found hanging from a bridge, or was it a tree or something? He didn't put himself there. You know, he was at work. He was in his work. He was working. You know, this is the thing in this day and age, 2024, and we've got to fear. We have to be fearful for our men and women when they're out on their own. This is crazy, and the government need to do something about this. This cannot go on. It can't go on.
We walked past a group of white men, older white men, and didn't even come close to them, y'all. And he lied and said that I took his wallet, called the whole Atlanta Police Department on me. They strip searched us in the bathrooms, and come to find out the cop found the man's wallet in his front seat. He had left it in the front seat. So that was one injustice that I was like, I am angry. I am fed up. How can someone lie and then the police department believe them? You know? So those experience the triggers for being misunderstood, someone not believing me, experiencing rejection, or dealing with unmet expectations. Those are all triggers for me.
Why are white men so afraid of strong black women? I've had to deal with comments today that were misogynistic and racist and homophobic and transphobic, all because of a strong black woman. And you bet your bottom dollar that I called out every single one of them because I am that guy. I won't stand for hate. But I'm not afraid of a strong black woman. I'm proud of a strong black woman because she's had to deal with all of that garbage, and she's still a strong black woman. I'll stand proudly by her any day.
Often white people will meet a black person who completely challenges every racial stereotype that they've ever had. Rather than giving up the stereotype, they create a special category for that person and say, well, you're not like other black people, or instead of saying, my ideas of black people were too narrow or too, and I think that's the tragedy of any kind of prejudicial thinking, that when we confront the circumstance that tells us it's not so, we frequently don't enlarge our sense of things. We actually come up with new ways to protect and defend that way of thinking.
A white person would be happy to receive the same treatment that our black citizens do in this society. Please stand. You didn't understand the directions. If you white folks want to be treated the way blacks are in this society, stand. Nobody's standing here. That says very plainly that you know what's happening. You know you don't want it for you. I want to know why you're so willing to accept it or to allow it to happen for others.
Now, you see, the fear that some white people have of black people, especially black men, is something that goes beyond just simple discomfort. Well, it's been ingrained throughout the years of history, stereotypes, and unfortunately racism. And it's almost as if there's this image in their mind, like a picture painted by years of media representation. And also societal beliefs, and let's just face it, racial profiling as well. And unfortunately, we've seen it time and time again. Black men are often unfairly portrayed as aggressive, violent, or even threatening, which creates a very real subconscious fear in some white people. But here's the thing, you see, these ideas aren't new. Historically, black people have been subjected to violence, dehumanization, and criminalization. And this has created a cycle where black people are seen through a lens of suspicion and fear. For example, in the video where we saw earlier, where a white woman talks about how when she hears black people, she automatically associates them with violence. That's something we've had before, right? And it's almost as if the media and society have conditioned us to view blackness as a synonymous with danger. But in reality, it's the opposite. And in fact, it's often white people who have been responsible for violence against black people, whether it's through systemic racism or also physical harm. Now, let's take the history of police brutality, for instance. You find that black people are disproportionately targeted and killed by law enforcement, even when they are unarmed. And the fear of black people committing violence doesn't even hold up when they look at the numbers. And with what we've been seeing, it's the white people, particularly the police officers, who have been responsible for the death of countless black individuals. And the narrative here, as you can see, is backwards. It's not black people who are the real threat. It's the system. and the history that have created this false narrative. And there's this guy we heard from earlier in the video who spoke about the subconscious projection of fear. Well, that's a powerful point, because some white people fear black people not because of something black people have done, but because of something they think will happen if black people are ever in a position of power equal to theirs. And you find that this fear comes from their own guilt and insecurity. They fear being treated the way they have treated the black people throughout history. But here's the thing, black people for the most part are not even interested in revenge. It's about fighting for equality, for justice, for an equal seat at the table. But white people who have been living with the privilege of being at the top for so long might find it hard to imagine a world where that dynamic changes. And again, let's not forget the fear white people sometimes have of black women, especially when they are confident and successful. You find that black women who rise to the top, break barriers, and succeed in spaces that have historically been dominated by white women and men who seem like a direct challenge to the power structure that exists. So, when you see black women defy those expectations and succeed, sometimes it can be threatening to some white people. But you see, when it comes to the issue of racial profiling, that's where a lot of fear stems from. Whether it's walking down the streets or just existing in public spaces, you find that black people are often seen as a threat for no reason other than the color of their skin. So here's the thing, the truth is that fear isn't based on any real facts. It's based on stereotypes and racial biases that has been passed down for generations. And we have to know that black people are not the enemy. The real enemy is ignorance and racial biases and the systemic structures that continue to perpetuate these fears. So after all that, I want to hear from you. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree with what we've talked about today? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's have an open discussion. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thought-provoking content. Stay tuned and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.